right, everybody. Hello, and thank you for joining our partner showcase today, featuring 4 of our newest partners. My name is Mike Heller, and I am the Director of Product Management for Datashield. Today, I'm excited to have with us a few of our partners in Bishop Fox, ExtraHop, SentinelOne, and Google Chronicle. Now, for this webinar, we wanted to recreate a bit of the trade show feel. So each one of our partners will have about 10 minutes to tell us a little bit about their company and their service offering. Just like at a trade show, we want you to ask questions. So please make sure you put all your questions in the Q&A section, and at the end of each segment, we'll have a few minutes where we'll be able to ask our partners some questions, as well as some time at the end during our general wrap-up. Now, one of the things that makes a trade show is the swag. So I want to give a huge thank you to each one of our partners today for contributing to the Datashield swag box. In your chat window, you should see a link to a Google form. Now, take a minute or so and fill that out. Give us some feedback on the webinar, as well as your address that you would like us to ship your swag box to. We're, of course, going to keep the information confidential, and we'll be putting these boxes together here in the next day or so and shipping those out. It's a lot of great stuff. It's stuff that you'll want to have. And again, thanks to our partners for making this happen. With that, let's go ahead and get going. We're going to start today with John Rose. John is the Vice President of Managed Security Services for Bishop Fox, and they are offensive security testing experts with pen testing and red team experience. Over to you, John.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, happy to be here. So quick intro to Bishop Fox. The company has been around for 16 years, focuses on offensive security, so mainly application and network penetration testing, code review, kind of all offensive identifying security vulnerabilities. So part of that over those 16 years, there was a lot of research and development, tool development, and other activities around kind of the offensive side of security. And that led us to a new solution we call CAST. So I want to talk about CAST today. So really, CAST was created as a solution to solve some of the problems with companies that we saw where they had an attack surface that was hard to identify because the attack surface was changing. So this happens for companies when you have M&A, you have new product launches, you're moving to cloud environments, as well as just having issues with shadow tech and other things. So for organizations that have trouble keeping track of their attack surface or the changes over time, that's where we design CAST. And so traditionally, doing continuous testing of those environments has been very hard because it's pretty noisy, where there's lots of issues. So we decided to solve that by having a combination of people and technology, and really filter out a lot of the noise that you get from vulnerability scanners and other technologies by having those experts validate those security alerts and findings, and then really just kind of provide the relevant stuff. So internally, we call this just the good. So just the critical and high risk issues. So the way CAST works and how it helps is we built a team of kind of a diverse team of operators. And so that team is a mix of ex-NSA operators, bug bounty hunters, and what you probably think of as commercial pen testers, right? And so that team uses an agile approach to triage any security alerts that come up for the team. So they then kind of look through that and see if there's any security vulnerabilities, and then they'll test and validate that. So the difference, like you can think about this kind of like a SOC. So you know how a SOC gets an alert, something fired, there's an log, there's an alert, and then the team will look at it from a defensive perspective. We do the same, but it's from an offensive perspective. So we see a potential vulnerability, the team will go in and triage and then go see if they can actually exploit that. So combined with that testing, we have a pretty unique approach to attack surface discovery, where we have a team, attack surface intelligence team, that is just continuously looking at the organization's attack surface, looking at DNS, looking at SSL, looking at a number of different ways to identify if there's changes, if there's new assets, what's happening, and then understanding if those assets truly belong to that organization. Oftentimes we've found that security teams don't even know what belongs to an organization. So we have a number of different confidence factors that we apply to any asset we identify to see if it meets the threshold that we believe it would belong to that company. And so the last piece really is emerging threats. So the company, so our team is constantly looking at emerging threats that come out, and every week, every month, there's something new. The challenge with the traditional point in time pen test is it's just point in time. A month later, something new is there, and you're not going to have coverage for that, and you have to figure out if you have that issue. With CAS, we're constantly looking at that, and it's easy for us to scale that across all of our customers.
So, John, that's a great point, and it sounds like it's a huge benefit of pen testing combined with CASs. What would you say are some of the other big benefits that your customers are seeing as they combine from CAS and the more traditional pen test model?
So CAS is really good at the attack surface discovery. So what you have as it changes over time, but it's not super deep. We're not reviewing the code of applications. We're not logging in and going deeper. It really is an attacker's perspective. So what we can do is, as we identify security issues in applications or networks or cloud environments, other things on that attack surface, if you want to go deeper, we can bring in expert consultants to do specific projects that'll do deep dive and look through the code of an application, or maybe threat model, kind of how it connects with other things. Sure. But CAST itself is really focused on kind of an attacker's view of your network continuously.
Got it.
So when you think about CAS, it often gets compared with a couple different technologies or solutions. So just kind of walk through some of those differences. First is just the attack surface management. So this is kind of a newish solutions that are coming out now, kind of like Expanse, Risk IQ. Those are really good at identifying what you have on the internet, but it doesn't always tell you what security vulnerabilities are there or what you need to do with those. So just knowing you have something is really useful, but then do you need to act on it? What do you do with that from a security perspective? Does it pose a risk to the organization? So that piece is missing, right? The attacker side of it. Vulnerability scanners, everyone has them, everyone uses them. I used to run one of the largest vulnerability scanners in the world. They're great for checking for vulnerabilities in a repeatable fashion. However, they fall short because somebody still has to go validate that vulnerability that was identified is actually real. There's a triage process. There's a vetting of those. And oftentimes the vendors for vulnerability scanners kind of err on the side of producing more, right? So you have to kind of weed through the false positives. The other side on vulnerability scanners is they often have to meet certain compliance standards, which means they're going to report things that are maybe low risk or not very important. And that kind of dilutes the value of the whole vulnerability scanner, but they have to do that to meet PCI compliance or other compliance regimes. And then last is bug bounty. So bug bounty is really, this team of people on the internet that can come and do anything to hack in when they want. The problem with that is they're not coordinated. They kind of will show up as needed. They kind of move from company to company, chasing kind of things that haven't been picked over. So you don't get the same level of quality and consistency that you do with CAST, right? Okay. And so CAST is continuous, has the team that's always there, and is just the goods, right? We focus more on the high and critical, actionable things that we've triaged and realized really matter. And so last, I just wanted to kind of recap on Bishop Fox as the company, in case you've never heard of them before. So Bishop Fox is, like I said, 16-year-old offensive security company. We do a lot of the work for Fortune 100, Fortune 2000 companies. Enterprises trust us to kind of assess their security posture. We do application network pen testing, red teaming, and then now we have CAST that we launched about 18 months ago.
Got it. Very good, John. Great overview of Bishop Fox and CAST. Let's take a look, see here in the question and answer section. Looks like we have a question, and it comes in around customer profile. So you've talked a lot about CAST today and the great service it is. What would you say a typical customer profile would be, for CAST?
Yeah, I would say we typically do well with companies that have a little bit larger of an attack surface. So if you've got a couple hundred systems on the internet, facing the internet, up to thousands of systems, that's kind of where we do really well. If you're a very small shop that has everything in AWS and really know where everything is and have no problem with asset management, then we're not a great fit. For larger organizations where it's a little bit more complicated, that's definitely where we fit.
Great. John, we appreciate you joining. This was a great overview. Cassidy put in the link, guys. If you're interested in finding out more, scheduling a demo with John and CAST, there's a link in the chat section that you can click on, fill out the information, and then we'll be in contact with you to get that set up. Actually, here's another question just came in. We have about a minute or so, John, I think, so probably a quick one.
Sure.
Do you have any close competitors for the CAST service specifically?
I think the closest competitor that we see is really internal, very mature internal companies that try to do something similar with their red team or with things, open source tools that they kind of glue together. There's a few competitors out there, but they're either purely automated, which misses kind of the people side of it and the validation, or they really try to do it with, the bug bounty is the other example, which is, kind of this crowd. So I don't think there's any direct one-to-one competitor with our approach for this.
Got it. Yeah, you guys sound like you really do have a great niche in the market. John, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. Let's go ahead and move over to our next partner with ExtraHop. And I'd like to introduce Justin Bauer. He is the Director of Worldwide Partner Solutions at ExtraHop. ExtraHop provides cloud-native network detection and response for the hybrid enterprise. Take it away, Justin.
Hey, Mike, thanks. Really appreciate you having us on this afternoon. For those of you, good morning and afternoon. As Mike mentioned, my name is Justin Bauer, and I've been with ExtraHop for a while now. ExtraHop was started back in 2007, and just as a quick company history before we move to the next slide, the company history of ExtraHop really started around network performance, network monitoring. And as our company evolved, we found a lot of our customers really using our network management monitoring and application monitoring at the network level for security purposes. With the invention of AI and the consistent usage of machine learning, we've taken that step forward over the past 3 years into a product set or a product line we call RevealX, which is really our core product line now in the security space. And so today I'm going to talk to you about network detection response, managed threat defense with Datashield, and how we're bringing value to the managed service provider market through network visibility. As most of you are probably familiar, and me having to go back and talk about some of the legacy packet capture tools and some of the legacy network detection pieces, there is a visibility gap when it comes to what's on the wire. We have our friends here at Chronicle and our friends here at SentinelOne coming up, and each of them have their important space in our environment. But we noticed in our research and what's been happening that the lack of visibility still exists to be able to cover the gaps in between each one of those spaces. So a lack of visibility on network traffic, a specific lack of visibility around encrypted traffic, a very long average time to discovery and dwell time, and continued havoc that gets wreaked when environments are breached or environments have issues. So if we can go to the next slide, Mike. The idea behind ExtraHop being a wired data network detection and response tool is that particular infections, particular breaches cannot hide within the network. And where we're primarily focused is in the east-west traffic corridor, where compromises happened and lateral movement is starting to occur. And ExtraHop has a series of not only base signatures, but behavior models that associate network traffic with those types of activities, nefarious activities. We continue to provide our customers fantastic network detection and network capabilities, but on top of that, we're looking at specific vulnerabilities. And the reality of the solution is that logs can be recreated. Inversely, people can hide in infrastructure that is agentless or OT. But when it comes to the network, we provide the color between the pages, if you will, that we fill in the gaps where a lot of our partnering technologies need our help and we need their help for reaction. And we create that visibility for them. Next slide, please. So when we talk about ExtraHop to a lot of our customers in a direct sell method, we talk about what we call the Gartner triad. The Gartner triad involves NDR, EDR, and SIEM. So everyone left on our presentation will fit perfectly into this conversation. But Gartner is essentially saying that in order to provide a complete and total visibility, detection, and response solution, you need to look beyond just log data. You need to look beyond just endpoint data. You need to look beyond just network data. You need the combined solution of them together. Makes it much more difficult to evade. We are a passive and agentless technology that you don't have to drop in the network. We don't require NetFlow or anything like that in any sort of agent perspective to get information. We are looking at those raw packets foundationally as they transit the wire, and we are the ground truth from a network transit perspective. So any sort of out-of-band tool, anything that can't be detected, is another layer of security and visibility that hackers just simply can't hide from. There's no way to detect it. You cannot run a script or you cannot spoof anything to make network traffic data look different. The packets in and of themselves are the packets of, and that's what we're really looking at from core all the way to the edge and into the cloud.
Got it.
Next slide. So what we've done is we've taken this next generation NDR solution or network detection response solution and coupled it with Datashield's prime services and, most importantly, the people that are on the back end that know how to read through this data. One of the reasons we partnered with Datashield is not just because of the outstanding customer support they have, but also their experience with network forensic packet data and our ability to kind of uplift that data and provide faster time to detection with context. Give one-click kind of access and really intelligent response in coupling with the integrations of the other partners on the call really gives Datashield that advantage to respond even faster to network threats. And not just from an alert perspective, but from a response perspective because of our integrations through not only Shield Vision, but with SentinelOne and with Chronicle directly. And so we're able to take not a swivel chair approach, but a direct feed approach into the Datashield engineer and triage department and move their detection and their response to even a faster and more escalated level and let them go ahead and take proactive action and correlative action with everybody else that's in this partnership. And that integration in and of itself, it can be done in any customer environment, but the idea that you have somebody on the back end that knows how to make the integration work and couple together, knows rules and knows the process flow from tier 1 through tier 3 to be able to relay that to the customer really adds an exceptional amount of value to our product delivery. So let's go to the final, or the next slide, excuse me. One more to go. The other the other piece that we really like to focus on is the accuracy of the detections without layers and layers of sifting in context. So we're 1 to 2 clicks away from the network level of an actual event. And we're able to recreate that network level event all the way back into the origin with up to 90 days of look back. And the real beauty of this is as detections move forward and as we see more modern attacks, Sunburst, Ripple, et cetera, the idea of understanding not only where the event started and if the event has been cleaned up, but what was actually compromised or during that event becomes paramount in that response. And there's not a SOC out there that would say like we don't have to do an RCA that also includes a level of what was compromised, what may have been taken, and what is our response going to be either to our brand or to our messaging. Yeah. With ExtraHop, we're able to provide that information in context to the Datashield engineers, not only to stop the nefarious activity, but also to show where it started, create a common RCA that can be coupled with the data from our partners, and then ultimately show what may have been taken and where, and give you a very, very firm, confident response to that. So final slide.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we go there, Justin, what would you say? You've done a great job of kind of explaining and talking through, the landscape, your product, and you've hit on some key benefits. Maybe sum it up as you kind of get to the end here. What would you say are the top 3 benefits of RevealX 360, like in your mind, like those power punches? If you take anything away from this, the top 3 features of RevealX 360.
Absolutely, Mike. So that's a fantastic question. First and foremost, the quality of response and detection. So having a detection quickly is important, but having an accurate detection with the look back and all of the correlative data that we can provide at the network layer without having to spend time and effort to go and get it is probably our number one value. We like to talk to our customers and to our partners about the fact that we can kind of take a tier 1 analyst ticket pickup and queuing to the next level. We can almost make them a tier 2 to the point where they can immediately go and see where the RCA is in the ticket itself. So that's our number one value. The second value is taking large sets of data, doing that data coupling, and bringing it into simple, understandable context in a GUI that matters. And that context continues to be, to this day, one of our biggest strengths and our biggest compliments from our customers. So not only are we providing complete data, but we're providing accurate context behind it. And the final thing is really the deployment aspect of what we see. So because we are looking at east-west traffic, we're looking at and for traffic in ways that most of the other security technologies are blind to. For example, traffic that comes from an application to a database prior to even having a user interaction. User credentials and asset identification that exists in an OT, ICS, or OCS network, or an IoT network. How do we provide that level of definition without sourcing it through a switch or a log if something is a printer one day and becomes a Windows workstation at midnight the next day, for example? So those are our big capabilities. You can't really lie to us. We can see it. We can determine what it is, and then we can help you manage those incidents.
Got it.
Does that answer your question, Mike?
Yeah, that was perfect. And we actually have a question that just came in as well. And again, around RevealX 360. And the question is, does RevealX 360 take the place of, or does it complement a SIEM?
That's a great question. And we are complementary. I mean, if you look at the previous slide, a few slides back about talking through the Gartner triad, we are not trying to take the place of the SIEM, and we are not trying to take the place of EDR. We are trying to add value and context. You need log data. You need tools like a SIEM to aggregate the various security events that are going on that might be hiding within your network. You need those endpoints and you need those security tools to be able to automate the process of handling that nefarious activity. So we might need the SentinelOne guys to shut down or isolate an endpoint because we don't have that capability. But we need to couple that event strain together with the intelligence that Chronicle can provide before we truly make that business interruption decision at that endpoint.
Got it. We got about a minute left, Justin, and we had another question that just came in I want to make sure we get to, but it'll probably be kind of like one of those rapid fire questions. So how do you see the need for network detection changing over the next 5 years? Do you think it's going to shift down market or get more commoditized?
I don't know if I would say it's going to go either way. I think the network is transitioning, and we as a company are transitioning more to the work from home environment and less toward the traditional data center up into the cloud and beyond. So whether it's SASE or it's cloud or it's database, all of those vectors are going to be combined. We are positioned beautifully for each and every one of those with our partnerships now and in the future. So we are already seeing Amazon workloads. We're already seeing Microsoft workloads. We're already seeing Google Cloud workloads to where we can provide that information back into the triad and help troubleshoot. And that is one of the beauties of where NDR is. I don't really see a one way or another. I think we're going to kind of go in a completely different direction as the network changes its generic format. Let me just finish up real quick. So you said I've only got a minute. Were there any other questions, Mike?
Nope. That looks like those are the two questions that we had come in. There may be some questions at the end. And attendees, if you have additional questions, we do have a section built in at the end of the webinar for any additional questions. So
great. So just to kind of cover off really, really quickly on what Datashield services are and how we're bringing that in. I'm not going to read through all of these, but the Datashield analysts bring a level of talent to the ball game and experience to the ball game that our current customers may not have or may not be able to generate on demand. And that's really the beauty of our partnership is we're making them more effective in the services that they deliver alongside the other partners on the call here. And it can go anywhere from deployment and management of systems all the way to alert, event context, and RCA and troubleshooting. So we really appreciate this partnership, and we're looking forward to growing. Absolutely, Justin. Thank you for joining today. You bring an immense amount of value, both as a partner and within your product set. We're going to turn the time over now to Steve Verko. He's a solutions engineer at SentinelOne. I've worked with Steve for about a year or so now. SentinelOne has developed a dramatic new approach to endpoint protection, and it's one that applies AI and machine learning to thwart known and unknown threats. So, Steve, tell us a little bit more about SentinelOne. It's like you're on mute, Steve-O.
Yep, I just realized that. So let's try that again. Wouldn't be a Thursday without someone messing up, right? So SentinelOne really, there's actually quite a bit that we do. We're really considered an overall like XDR platform, which is the new acronym that's being thrown around. But at our core, where we're often most implemented is as an endpoint prevention and EDR solution. And then oftentimes we're used for a lot of other things around that. So for instance, we would replace like a traditional AV or even an next-gen AV. But one of the things that happened when we first started as a company years and years ago was we really saw that organizations were either, or other products were either very prevention based. So again, think your traditional AV, way far on the left, or EDR started creeping up with some of your first wave EDR vendors, and they were off all the way to the right. So if you wanted to do both endpoint protection and EDR, well, you need two different products, two different stacks. So what we did really from the beginning was we started smack dab in the middle and offered both. So I'm only going to show one slide, and that's going to be kind of how we do some of what we do when it comes to protecting an endpoint. We do a lot more from a feature set perspective, but it would take me forever to talk about that, so I'm going to try to streamline it. But on top of it, after this, I'll actually go through kind of a live demonstration of what it looks like. So first and foremost, I really like to talk about the underlying workflow because this is probably the best piece to understand about our product. So first and foremost, our agent's completely autonomous, which is one of the most important things to really our DNA with this platform. So what that means is we don't need to stream any, let's say, behavioral data off the endpoint and up to the cloud. So even if the endpoint's completely isolated, or I don't know, maybe you're on an airplane mode, you pop in a thumb drive with something advanced on it, the agent should be able to respond to that the exact same way that it would if it had a network connection. So first and foremost, to get low-hanging fruit out of the way, we do have a reputation feed. That's probably the only real quote-unquote cloud technology that we use to really help detect things on an endpoint. That's just to get the low-hanging fruit out of the way again. But we don't do like your traditional signature databases like a traditional AV would. So you don't have to worry about constant updates or constant virus scans. Virus scans are really a thing of the past with us. So really what we implement is first and foremost machine learning models. So when we take a look at a file, we don't try to match an exact line of code or pattern like that. We actually do what's known as feature extraction. And then based on the features that we extract, we essentially throw math at it and determine based on the features and the combination that we see, is this file going to be malicious, suspicious, benign? And if it is deemed as malicious or suspicious, we'll automatically remediate it. And I'll actually show you what the remediations look like in a sec. If it's benign, or maybe we're dealing with something that's not even file-based, so maybe we're dealing with maybe a lateral movement attack, or we're dealing with something which loaded directly into memory, let's say, that's really where behavioral detection comes into play. And behavioral detection is incredibly important these days because a lot of the attacks we see are in fact fileless, or we might be seeing a lot of living off the land techniques, things like that, which aren't necessarily just like, hey, you have a piece of malware executing. It's, hey, there's a person behind a keyboard and mouse doing this through PowerShell or something like that. So really with behavioral AI, that's where we're also different from a lot of the other vendors that do similar things because of the way that we actually correlate all the data on the endpoint before it's even sent up to the cloud. So that really helps when the team over at Datashield are doing things like analysis of alerts. The data is already pre-correlated for them. They don't need to go out and grab more logs. All they have to do is understand the context of the story to see what happened. So it saves a lot of time, and it also helps with reducing things like alert fatigue. Now, with detection, so let's say we do discover some bad behavior, there's a number of different responses which can be completely automated or manually performed, depending on how the policy is set up. So for instance, we can do the what I like to call the table stakes responses, which are kill and quarantine. So if we detect a bad process or a bad file, we can kill that off or quarantine that file, and boom, the attack storyline's like stopped right there, right on the endpoint. But not everything is always as cut and dry. So for instance, if let's say a file or let's say some activity was able to maybe edit the registry or do a few other things before it's really considered to be malicious, we can actually revert that storyline. What I mean by that is we can remove those reg keys, those persistence mechanisms that are dropped, and we can even revert files, heaven forbid, if something should get encrypted or damaged. So I'm actually gonna go through that live in a sec here, but the last piece is it's not all about what the agent detects, but threat hunting is a very important activity. So being able to actually go through loads of benign data to find maybe patterns, or maybe it starts as something as simple as an IOC search, so on and so forth. It's also important for the agent to actually send all of that benign raw data up, and then literally the SOC can review it for whatever they might see. Maybe it's something that they see out of another solution. Maybe it's something hitting the firewall logs and they want to investigate, okay, who else has talked to this IP? What was the process that did it? Who is the user that launched that process? So on and so forth. It's already correlated and really in order. So that's just kind of the core competency. There's a lot of other things we do, but that's probably one of the most important. So what I'm going to do is, let me just pivot over here. So I'm actually going to jump right into our console. And for the scenario that I'm going to show is really going to show more of the detection and response capabilities. So the way that I have it set up is I actually have it set up for our agent to only generate alerts on what I'm doing. It's not going to automatically kill and quarantine or protect it. I'm actually going to do that manually. So just keep in mind what I'm about to do, we would kill on our own. We're not waiting for a human being to click a button. So let me pivot back over. So on the left, I have my C2 server. Apparently my banner of the day is a pony. So I have random images that it grabs. So essentially, this will be my C2 server, and I'm going to go through kind of what we're seeing with a lot of the ransomware attacks. So ransomware attacks aren't just simply encrypting data. Many of them, like Maze Ransomware Group, they kind of go above and beyond, as well as some of the other groups now. And they actually do things like data exfiltration, and they'll actually blackmail people saying, hey, we're going to release the data if you don't pay us. And that's kind of just an additional kind of way that they generate revenue. So for sake of time, let me jump right into it. So what I've done ahead of time is I've gone and I've actually, oh, I know what just happened. Hang tight. My VM loves to do this on me, and it likes to move things when I double click it. So hold on.
Steve-O, you mentioned, as you're opening that up, you mentioned ransomware there. Now I'm aware of this, but you guys have $1 million ransomware warranty, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we like to put our money where our mouth is, so to speak. So essentially, if a customer gets hit with ransomware and it gets through, for instance, our prevention and detection and response layers, we'll pay out up to, I believe it's $1,000 per endpoint, $1 million per breach, if that ever happens. So.
Nice.
So essentially, I've gone ahead and I've opened my quote unquote malicious document. And for those that were watching, you probably saw an alert pop up on the bottom right. So immediately we would have killed and quarantined the document that I launched, but that wouldn't make for like a nice, sexy demo. So I let it go through a little bit further. So as we can see on the left, I actually have an interpreter session back, so I can actually start issuing commands over to this box. So the first couple things that I'm going to do are I want to start by kind of hiding in plain sight a little bit. So right now, the attack's actually running as this process right here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to pivot to something which looks a little bit more trusted. So we're going to jump in and invade OneDrive's memory space. So we'll look like OneDrive.exe doing this. Then the next thing that I'm going to do is I want to start elevating my privileges, but I don't want the end user to notice. So for Windows, some of these are patched by now. So working on newer demos, but in a lot of environments, some of this stuff is actually still very viable, and I've actually run into it a couple times over the last few weeks. So for instance, the first thing I'm going to use is the FOD helper bypass, which was a very popular bypass used on Windows for quite a while. And again, I still see this one used quite often. So what this is going to let me do is it's going to let me actually spawn system level processes, but without alerting the end user with a UAC prompt. So for instance, if I go here, the next set of my script is going to go ahead. And normally there would be no alert. I'm using Process Hacker. So we'll ignore that one. But ultimately what I did was I spawned these two processes, and these two are running as system. So at this point, I should be able to do whatever I want to do. Now, if I pivot back to the SentinelOne console and we take a look at my alerts, we can see the initial alert on the document. And one of the neat things that we do is, as I mentioned, we correlate everything as it happens in real time right there on the endpoint. That's one of the ways that we do behavioral analysis. So we've gone ahead and, despite having all the basic data is what I like to call it, we also have a list of all the threat indicators that we're seeing in the storyline that we're tracking. So these are all mapped to MITRE. You can click into these if you ever want to learn more. But probably one of the really cool views that we offer is a live look at exactly what's happening as we're viewing it. So we can see from the moment that I open the Word document, I can see every file it touches, every process it launches, network communications coming out of the process. We get the whole execution profile. And if I keep drilling in all the way to the end, we can see up to the point where we're at now, where I've gone ahead, used FOD helper to actually spawn my system level processes. So what I'm going to do is, the first thing is I'm going to exfiltrate data. Now, I've already pre-staged it in my script, so it's going to target the data in my sensitive folder. So often what you'll see is you might see like the attacker use something like 7-zip or what have you. So they'll go ahead and stage the data, zip it up, and they'll exfiltrate it. So I'll give it a sec here to do that. Then I'm going to do what MITRE likes to call data destruction. So we're going to go ahead and destroy the data, and then we're going to encrypt whatever's left on the endpoint. So I'm going to go ahead and delete it. Then it'll just take a sec, and then I'll go ahead and drop my ransomware payload. So I like to use live payloads. So I'm actually using one called GanCrab. It's been around for a while, but I like to use it because it's pretty efficient. I can go through my box in about a minute and a half. So
Steve, while that's running here, let's get a quick question in from the attendees. They just wanted, the question is SentinelOne AI based, is it AI based like a Cylance?
Yeah, so I like to give credit where it's due. Cylance was one of what we'd call like the first wave EDRs. So they really came up with the whole feature extraction idea in their product, where they take a look at a file, and then rather than just trying to match exact patterns, they'd actually extract the features and throw math at it, similar to how we do. Our algorithms train differently, of course, so we focus a lot not just on trying to detect what's malicious, but telling the difference between that and what's also benign. But on top of that, we do a lot more behaviorally. So we use both a combination of machine learning and AI to answer that question.
Great.
So at this point, my endpoint's completely encrypted. So if I go ahead, I got my ransomware note. So if I go back, I'm going to go ahead and refresh my storyline. And it'll just take a sec here as new data hits. I added about 19,000 events to it. So what we should see is if I take a look at the actual ransomware here, the agent can actually see exactly what's being encrypted, changed by the ransomware, but you can also tell that typical ransomware fashion, we're deleting shadow copies. So one of the neat tricks that we have is we have anti-tampering not just around our agent, but around the snapshots that we take. So for instance, if heaven forbid this ever happens, which nothing should ever get this far with us there, but if any changes ever do occur by the time we do detect a malicious storyline, what we're able to do is either automatically or manually, I'm doing it manually, we go ahead, click rollback here, and in a couple seconds, we should actually see it kill my two processes here. It'll cut the connection back to my C2, and then it'll actually start recovering all the data or anything that was a part of that specific storyline. So this response could take up to 30 seconds, depending on when the last heartbeat was. So we'll give it a sec there. But one of the really beautiful parts about this is, A, it means you don't have to reimage the box. Heaven forbid something should happen. So it saves time, especially with remote employees. But B, all of the data that we're generating, you can exfil it to other solutions like a Chronicle, for instance. If you're running your data lake on that, or if you're using that as your SIM. We also provide full API access in our product. So literally we build the API calls out before anything else in our product. So you can actually do more in our API than you can do from our interface, which helps a lot with integrations with other solutions. So for instance, if something happens with your NDR, for instance, like Justin was just talking about, an event there, you could have an automation that triggers something in SentinelOne to maybe isolate that endpoint on the network, and then you can further feed that data to Chronicle. So, but yeah, so that's the quick look.
Well, we really appreciate it, man. Great job. Appreciate the partnership. It's been exciting to see SentinelOne over the past year or so as, we've been involved with you guys really rise to the top. So looking forward to the continuation. And Cassidy has also put a link to SentinelOne. If you have an interest in finding out more, make sure you fill that out. All right, let's go ahead and move over to Jonas from Google Chronicle. Jonas is a channel manager for Google, and Chronicle makes it easy for enterprises to move from a legacy security tool to a modern threat detection system. Using the Google Scale platform, security teams, they have the ability to send their security telemetry to Chronicle at a fixed cost so that it is diverse, and it's high-value security data that can be taken into account for detections. Jonas, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, and thanks for having us.
Yeah.
I'm going to share out my screen here. Just a second. Mike, I may need you to pull up my presentation. I'm getting a system alert here, so I'll be the second one. Have the Zoom technical difficulty of the day. Apologies.
No worries. It happens. It had to happen to somebody, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll keep my bad luck to myself next time. Sorry.
Fair enough.
Here we go. I should be sharing right now. Can you see?
All right. Yeah, fantastic. All right. Thanks, Mike. So as Mike mentioned, I'm Jonas. I represent Google Cloud Security. And today we're going to talk about Google Chronicle and our integration with Datashield. Next slide. So Google's approach to security can be wrapped up in a couple of sentences. Right. The first thing is trust nothing. So we're a zero trust environment here at Google. We don't use traditional VPNs or firewalls or anything like that. Applications are everything. And the last part of that, the second part of that, is detect everything. So Google Chronicle was actually born out of a Google product called Nirvana. Nirvana was what Google made after the Aurora attacks, 7, 8, 9 years ago, which essentially wanted to be, its purpose is to be the Google security telemetry. And that's what we built out. We branded that as Google Chronicle and made it available to our customers. Next slide, please, Mike. Okay, so if you're unfamiliar with Chronicle, essentially it is a security analytics and threat hunting platform. It's built on the power of Google infrastructure. So people ask me all the time, does this run on GCP? And the answer is no. You could approximate a Chronicle on GCP or AWS or any cloud, actually, but it would be very, very expensive, right? You're going to be storing a ton of data, and also you're wanting very performant searches. So that takes a lot of resources by definition. So we wanted to abstract that from SOCs, right? We wanted to allow you to be able to do that without having to worry about all of these things like costs and database and search heads and things like that. So it's a planet scale system for storing and analyzing your data. It's useful for threat hunting as well as like a data lake / SIM use case. Essentially, we take all of the security telemetry from all of these different products, including some of the things that Steve and John and Justin talked about, and we enrich it. Right, we're going to apply some algorithms to it to automatically pull out anomalies, but we also allow you to kind of be custom, search it very quickly, and get security data out of it when you need it. The problems we solve. So, we look at this as a term in the terms of security data overload. And most companies that we talk to have some sort of SIM, some sort of data lake that they use. And essentially they tell us a couple of things. All right. They say my SIM can't scale. I had to size this thing when I was at level 1 maturity, and now I'm at level 5 maturity, and it doesn't scale out very well. I can't store the data, and when I search for the data to get it out, it's not very performant. It doesn't return it, in the time frame that I need it. Second challenge is the cost. So as time goes on, we discover more and more security telemetry. We want to house that so we can have information about attacks when they come through. And most legacy SIEM solutions do a consumption-based ingest model. The more data you store, the more it costs. So that doesn't scale very well either. And it forces security departments into this weird conundrum of choosing security over dollars. Right, I could have all of that information, but it's going to cost me more. It may blow up my license. It may cost my budget, things of that nature. So we wanted to fix these problems for the security departments out there, and that's what we have with Chronicle on the right side of this screen. So it's cloud native. That just means it's SaaS. It runs on Google Core, but it is agnostic to anything that you're using. We certainly pull in information and telemetry from on-premise systems, from systems in other clouds, from systems in Google Cloud Platform, and we pull it all in, index it, and you're able to search that at a very, very high rate of speed, just as you would do in a Google search for the internet, right? So we do that for security telemetry. The next piece of that is we do go back one more, Mike.
Sorry about that, Jonas.
One more points there. So we're fixed cost. So we're user-based licensing. So essentially, we solve that problem of you having to choose security over dollars. We say, hey, license your users, and let's bring in all of that telemetry. That way, when we hunt, we have the full picture. If there's an event, we have the full picture, et cetera. Clear signals. So Google Chronicle does a great job since we collect all the data, we apply the algorithms to it to kind of pull out the anomalies. What's not normal about all this data that you've sent to us? Chronicle does a great job of pulling that out. We also get indicators from major threat frameworks, MITRE attacks, so on and so forth. Google owns VirusTotal as well. That all comes natively in the system. Now, Mike, you can go ahead and flip the slide there.
There it is.
Thank you. So how does this impact the business? We always like to tie these things back to the business. Time to value, again, you don't have to size anything here. We're SaaS delivering. We can scale to as much data as you can possibly bring. So that's very, very easy for businesses to deploy. Total cost of ownership, since we're abstracting that concept of ingest and data away from the pricing model, that keeps it predictable. And our customers like that. They like the ability to say, hey, if I go out and we acquire this business of 500 users, I know exactly how much that's going to cost for my SOC function. And I don't have to do any sort of math around ingest or amount of data that's going in. We aim to improve the SOC metrics. So data enrichment allows our partners at Datashield who monitor this many times to be able to find things quicker. And whatever you do in your company, you can do that with like lower level SOC analysts and do it super quickly as well. Fourth point on there is the extensible platform. All of the guys that went before me, Steve, Justin, John did a great job. We integrate with all of those guys. Our goal is to pull in all of the security data. So we have an extensible platform that allows you to pull in just about any sort of security relevant data that you could possibly ask for. So that's the platform. And then lastly is the threat intelligence piece. I already talked about kind of the third party threat indicators that we bring in. In the fall, we're launching our own threat intelligence. It's going to be called Uppercase. That's going to take Google's experience with just the vast breadth of security knowledge that we gain by being worldwide network and put that into the Chronicle product so that all of our customers can leverage that. I think that was my last slide. Are there any questions, Mike?
Yeah, actually, we do have a question here, Jonas. What is the per license fee for Chronicle, and are there limitations to the types of logs or data sets that can be ingested?
Yeah, we do a per license fee, and you can get with your Datashield rep to kind of talk about what that looks like in the Datashield model. Generally, it's around $50 per user. So you expect us to pay something like that. Are there limits on what you can bring in? So the second part of that question, and the answer is, it's only limited to security telemetry. So how I normally explain that is we don't want operational logs in there. Like I don't necessarily care about, when your server was rebooted or so on and so forth. But if it's security telemetry, then all of that is included. So obviously, it's not unlimited storage for $50, but it is as long as that's security relevant.
So, what are some of the immediate benefits that Chronicle customers get when they pair their service with like a Datashield MDR, for example?
The immediate benefits that they're going to get by working with Datashield is Datashield's done a great job and has vast experience in kind of deployment and modeling. You're going to get that time to value that's going to be in days, not weeks or months. And Datashield has the ability to do any sort of custom tuning, rules, dashboarding, so on and so forth that you require for your business. We at Chronicle, we don't know every individual customer and business as well as Datashield does. And Datashield does a great job in kind of giving that bespoke solution because they have that close relationship with you, the customer.
Got it. Well, thanks, Jonas. And also thanks to John, Steve, and Justin for joining today. Guys, this has been a great webinar. I hope that everyone has gotten some great information out of it. As a reminder, if you've not filled out the box yet, the Google form, please make sure that you do that so we know where to ship your swag box. Again, thank you for joining our event. We hope that you'll join us again in the future. Have a great rest of your day, guys. Thanks for joining.